Hey, it's SickBoy from the Gaminganarchist Collective, and I've got a few thoughts I'd like to share with you guys. Now, I made a comment after playing Injustice Gods Among Us by feeling that the game's plot was very much based on the Marvel Civil War, and a comment from events there has made me think. He said, is it more like that than it is about, say, the Kingdom Come Ministries? Which, for those of you who don't know, is a similar kind of storyline to Injustice, in that it's an Elseworlds DC thing, and there's a big fight between different superheroes and supervillains. Lines get drawn, what have you. Now, I still maintain that it felt like it was more like the Mark Millar Civil War series. If you don't know what that is, look it up, but it basically culminates with Captain America. It's Captain America and Iron Man fighting over what's right. Should government have control and registration, or should people have a right to be good or bad? And it culminates with Captain America getting assassinated, which is the whole big point of that story. Now, it made me think about originality, and of course how stories are derivative by their very nature. That modern day stories are almost always derived from something else. And I'm sure a lot of other people do, I get very snobby about ideas when I recognise what it's derivative from. I'll give some original examples. Now, I've got some examples down here that I just grabbed off my shelves before I sat in front of the camera. One of those things is Game of Thrones. Now, this series of books I first dismissed when I first heard of it, because I thought, it's the same. It's just the standard high fantasy shit, utilising the kind of medieval sort of War of the World style, grasp for power. This is going to be a piece of shit. Now, these books are really well written. They're really good stories. Are they original? Not particularly. Do they borrow from a load of different folklore? Absolutely. Another example, actually, now I think of it, that I don't have to actually have on my bookshelf, are the Witcher books. I can't think of the name of the series that the Witcher books are absolutely ripped off from, but they are. They're a wholesale rip-off. Are they good? I really enjoy the books. The games based on the books terrific? Yes, they are. Maybe you kind of think about this thing, go, there's a difference between something being poorly done, or influenced by something, and something being a shitty knockoff. There are some examples of things that are shitty knockoffs. There are things that take games, take ideas, not just games, but books and stories and all kinds of films, and take something that is already established, and they use that as a basis to influence their work. Example of that would say, say Ni no Kuni. Wrath of the White Witch, standard JRPG tropes all over it, thrown in with Pokemon. It's a very unoriginal concept. It's a load of concepts thrown together, really. There's not much in this game that is actually groundbreakingly new, but it's fantastic. I absolutely love it. And it just makes me think, do we... for example, when Grand Theft Auto first went 3D, this is obviously 3 where it first went 3D, this is just a copy of 4 that I have lying around, but does that mean that True Crime is shit, The Getaway is shit, and the Saints Row series is shit? Not really. They all have their charms. They're not all perfect, they're not necessarily as good as the original, but are they terrible? Not really. I own them all. They're fun to play. And even go back even further, look at other things. Look at Gears of War, say. The Gears of War series, standard, hard-ass, Space Marines killing things. Now, there was a lot of stick when Space Marine came out. Now, Space Marine is basically Gears of War without a cover system. However, the funny thing being is that the Games Workshop Space Marine predates Gears of War by well over a decade. Warhammer 40,000 has been going on for over 20 years. They didn't originate, but they pretty much solidified the idea of the post-human Space Marine. That's pretty much their thing, and it's all over the place. I mean, it's Master Chief. Master Chief is a Space Marine in Doomguy's outfit. This is basically a Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine dressed in Doomguy's outfit. Does that make Halo derivative? When Halo 1 came out, it actually revitalised and probably started the whole push towards FPS again being this dominant thing. It was one of the major contributing factors. So probably not fair to say that it's derivative and crap. When you look at Uncharted got a lot of stick because Uncharted was basically Tomb Raider, and then Tomb Raider comes out and they knock it for being too like Uncharted. Or is it the fact that it's a symbiotic relationship where culture and ideas develop and build together? I think the idea is far more complicated than people are giving it credit for, myself included. I'm somewhat of a snob when it comes to originality, but frankly, originality is a nothing. One thing that made me think about this, I dug this out. This is a copy of Arkham Asylum, A Serious House for a Serious Earth, by Grant Morrison, art by Dave McKean. If you haven't read this, if you're into your comics, why haven't you read this? I'm going to be very careful because this is the original printing. This is the 1989 print. It's a little bit delicate, so I'm not going to throw things around. But this book is a very interesting art style. It pretty much is one of those part of the 80s thing that redefined Batman and this kind of stark artwork, and very, very dark. Very, very dark. However, this has been the basis, the gothic basis, for a lot of modern Batman. This is one of the things that Heath Ledger read over and over and over again in order to define the Joker for himself. This and The Killing Joke, I believe, were the main books he read to make the Joker that is so well loved, partly due to the fact that he died after making the film, but the fact that it's such a good performance and people so love his idea of the Joker is because it comes from pretty much this. This book is a major contributing factor. Now, I haven't grabbed it, but I looked at it in my bookshelf. There's also a book called Joker, which is basically the Heath Ledger Joker in the graphic novel format, only darker than the film. So, however, this book, as good as it is, and as original as it is, I say it's original, a lot of it is based on Alice in Wonderland. A lot of it is taking imagery and ideas, and it's a dark gothic take on Alice in Wonderland with Batman. So is this derivative and shit? Should that book that has gone down in history be immediately dismissed on the grounds of its narrative not being original? Some things can, some things can't. Should Stephanie Meyer's work be dismissed as derivative? I think absolutely it should. I think it's a bunch of talentless, hacky shit. Do I get annoyed when I see Harry Potter and just look at it and go, basically you've taken Dickensian names, thrown in a load of other established concepts, thrown in some lore, and created something, and all of a sudden it's deemed original when it's not as original as it seems. But does that make it a bad children's entertainment? No, it doesn't. What it is one of the most successful children's entertainment fictions that's ever been written. Do I think it's the best written thing? No, I don't. Can I criticise it? Fuck yes, I can. But what's the problem with it? And also made me think, do we give a free pass to things because we don't know where they come from? Or we do know where they come from and they acknowledge where they come from? Examples of that I was thinking would be Lollipop Chainsaw. Now, I really enjoy Lollipop Chainsaw. It's a really fun game. The combat is a bit stunted. It's not very slick. However, it's full of established tropes and stuff, but it's mocking those established tropes. Written by James Gunn, the guy who wrote the Dawn of the Dead remake, and is just generally making his whole career out of being kooky and weird. And of course, Suda51, who again makes his entire career out of being a weirdo. It takes a lot of established tropes, but because it's an original and overly winky, like a lot of Suda51 stuff, it gets extra points over other games, even though the mechanics aren't great. Has a good soundtrack, has an interesting visual style, takes the piss out of the whole pervy nature of anime culture and video game culture. It's a very tongue-in-cheek. I think it's a highly overlooked title. But is it given too much benefit of the doubt? Because it's not as derivative as other things. For example, I'm a massive snob with Call of Duty, for example. I'm getting to the point where it's the same game every year, blah, and people who love the series seem to be confused why I would say, but it's the same fucking game. And they go, no, it's not. They've changed this and they've changed that and they've tweaked it. Now, is it value for money? No, it's not value for money. Are they tweaking an well-established series? Yeah, they are. Is the multiplayer getting honed to a point of perfection? it's improving. The multiplayer style is mostly improving, other than people disliking new traits and things. However, that said, I'm still not going to be someone saying that Call of Duty every year is a good thing. Others would be Nier, for example. This game is loved for its flaws. Now I've started playing it. It's good, and you can gloss over a lot of the problems with it because it's so original. And it's a similar thing that you get with games such as Mirror's Edge as well, which is the same kind of thing. It's so original that you can overlook flaws. When something is derivative, you feel that it needs to do more to impress you. In the way that Saints Row is a very good game. The third one got whole on cartoony. Feel about that what you will. I found that it was fun to go that route. I liked that they just decided to go, fuck it, this game is not about. However, I don't like the fact they took out a load of customisational options and they made the game more limiting than they did in the previous version. Saints Row 2 for me is still the benchmark, but that game has got to the point where it's gone, oh, fuck it, I know we're a GTA clone. Right, let's shoot missiles at old ladies. The whole point of the game was to make it cartoony and stupid. So I think it's an interesting balance, and I think that if you're an established and knowledgeable gamer, or with any kind of thing, with comics or whatever, it's very easy to find things derivative. And although finding something overly derivative is entirely a call to be made, I mean, it's fair to say that, for example, a game like Vanquish, which I was thinking that is not particularly derivative. It has a lot of tropes in there that are well established. However, the gameplay is fairly novel. Although it's kind of Gears of War, you can take this game apart. Now, I really enjoy this game. And it's a Shinji Mikami game. It's Platinum Games. It's a damn good game. Is it entirely original? No. It's basically the idea of a superpowered space marine with a sci-fi shooter. It's full of tropes, but it's kind of novel enough to distinguish itself as a particularly different IP. I don't look at that and go, oh look, Doom guy. However, it's still clearly, I could go, Dead Space? Yeah. Look at it. That's just Dead Space. That's just Dead Space if Dead Space was a Japanese sci-fi shooter. I think it's easy, and it's something that we do too much perhaps. I understand why we do, but we do it. So I think it's something that I just like to share with you guys. Just a little thought as to when something's derivative. Is it derivative? Is it shit? Is it a plain just cloned cash-in? Or is it someone taking something that's popular and tweaking it and trying to make their own entry into the game? And that needs to be done by a case-by-case basis. Because to dismiss a story or a mechanic or a style as derivative is probably not of any value, because let's face it, pretty much anything original that's ever been done is pretty much going to have already been done or already been attempted. If that was the case, then, for example, Mirror's Edge would be the greatest game the world has ever seen. And it isn't. Brink would be considered way better than it was because it had that kind of... It had an interesting game, it had an interesting art style, and it had online-offline game. It's not original, but it could have been considered better than it was, but it wasn't because it was glitchy and shit. But you could have gone, actually, for a console shooter, that's pretty unique, and it could have become a big deal. But it wasn't. So I've got no conclusion on this, really. Just a fact that just to consider when you dismiss something initially on the grounds of it just being derivative. Is it really? Because something has come before it. Like I said, when I mentioned about the Injustice storyline, it is very much like Civil War. However, it's also very much like Kingdom Come, and it's very much, the ending is quite Infinite Crisis-y, Crisis on Infinite Earths. Is it Infinite Crisis or Crisis? No, Crisis on Infinite Earths. The Superboy Prime imprisoned, carving an S into it. That's not the end of Injustice. I'm not spoiling anything, but it's the whole kind of, ooh, nasty evil Superman's in prison now. It's that kind of thing. I don't think I'm really too worried about spoilers from Injustice, but or do you people look at that and go, oh, it's too much like Mortal Kombat 9. It's done by the same developers. It's fairly similar. They've put in the idea of a main campaign and stuff, so you could go, it's just Mortal Kombat 9 with the DC skins on. And even with the tweaks, you could probably still say that. But does that make it a poor game? Probably not. I think it should be judged entirely on its mechanics and how it survives as an online shooter. Online fighter. I can't imagine it taking over, say, Street Fighter, or even Mortal Kombat, or BlazBlue, or things like that. But it's a good game, and perhaps it's unfair to consider the story derivative. Anyway, guys, this has just been a bit of a waffly thing I wanted to get out there, and thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys later.